welcome to Kay's Tiny House Adventures, where I, Kay, am building my very own tiny house. I have zero build experience, but I have lots of drive and really amazing friends. Today, I am going to share with you the process of putting up the walls. We have framed the walls and it looks so good. It looks like an actual house. Day one, we decided to just start with the front wall. So that will be the wall where the door is. So it's pretty long. It spans the whole length of the trailer and it also goes up into the gooseneck. And we bought all the lumber for that in one go at Home Depot. And Phil had taken the blueprints I had gotten from Summit Tiny Homes and put it in a CAD, which I'm pretty sure is like the same software that Summit Tiny Homes use because it looked like exactly the same, which was awesome. But then he also put that through like a lumber optimizer, so it told us the least amount of lumber we would need to pull off the project. And so we went by those numbers and got everything, and this just wasn't a go to Home Depot and take up however many you need. Doug looked at every single board to make sure we bought the straightest possible wood that we could find, which was an extra amount of effort, but totally worth it to know that, you know, we weren't going to run into any crazy wonky pieces, especially with framing the wall because it's pretty important. You want that straight. Every little bit of measurement counts, and like with many things with this tiny house, there's not a lot of leeway for error, so we did that. To extend the tie-down rods, I had to cut some spare rod to size, and we used a coupling nut to just make that taller, so that's what I'm doing here. And then shaved off the ends so that we could put nuts over these as well. A few days after the Home Depot trip, we started working on the main part of the wall, which is again where the door is, and we basically laid it out and framed it on the trailer, so we just had to like lift it up when we were done. And I learned a lot about headers for windows and making the headers and framing them up. Luckily, I bought windows to size to map to the blueprints I got, so all of those cuts were exactly what they needed to be, which was really easy. Doug was in charge of nailing everything together because, again, scary nail gun that's as old as I am. And for the foot plates, we had to drill holes for any pipes or the tie-down rods, so I was in charge of drill press stuff. And for the wheel wells, we had to build these huge headers to go above them, and that was probably the heaviest part of this whole thing, was just that huge massive header, which is two 2x6s with a 1/2-inch plywood in between, similar to how you would do a header for a window. The next day, we got the whole wall that goes on the bottom of the trailer done, and then the next day we raised it up, and whoo, was it heavy. It was very heavy, and to get it above the tie-down rods, we had to put it on little scrap pieces of 2x4 and then kind of kick those out. This wall was so heavy, y'all, but we got it up. There was a big old window right there, so it was really cool to see that all put together. We then wanted to work on the shorter wall, which is where the kitchen will be. As we were working on the second wall, the scary nail gun stopped working. Doug took it apart, put it back together again, tried to figure out what was wrong, and he had a theory that the air compressor pressure was too high. So we fixed the air pressure and it started working again. Yay! So we were able to put up a third wall that's actually like underneath the gooseneck, and then we needed to go back to Home Depot to get more lumber for the rest of the walls. Now, this was around Thanksgiving time, so Doug and Debbie actually went to Arkansas and I was here basically pet and house sitting for everyone who was gone. So I was very busy driving around town making sure everyone's pets were alive and happy, but I had some time to meet up with Phil, who was also in town, to attempt to build the wall, the front wall, but on the gooseneck, so high up. And I say attempt because the first day we met up, we were doing so well. We were in this groove, we were cutting pieces, we were measuring, Phil was using the scary nail gun, like it was all going so well. And then we raised the wall because we needed to take some measurements, so we weren't ready to like nail it in, but we were needing to see the length for some other boards to cut, and one of the pieces of wood was not nailed in. And so as I bent down to maneuver the wall to make it straight, the board fell on my head and I got a pretty bad goose egg out of it. It sucked. There was a lot of crying, there was a lot of pain. So that was basically the end of that day of work. This was not the first time my head has been hit by lumber where Phil is nearby. So the first time we were making our own cornhole sets, and I was on the driveway like tying my shoe or something, and Phil was holding on to the cornhole set and it fell on my head. That hurt. The second time was for this project. He had like a 2x4x10 or 12, and he was walking with it to the saw and he bonked me in the head. That was the second time. Luckily that didn't hurt too badly. And so this was the third time. So, you know, hit me once, shame on you. Hit me twice, shame on me. Hit me 3 times. Kay needs a hard hat if Phil's on site. So luckily I can laugh about it now, but at the time it really, really hurt. But everything's good, no internal bleeding, no lasting side effects, so yay. I also got a lovely Thanksgiving dinner with Phil and Tanya. Tanya made this amazing lasagna that was so good. So we had a little Friendsgiving. That was delightful. And then Phil and I, the next day, were like, okay, we gotta finish this wall. And we are setting things up and we're ready to nail it all together. And the nail gun stops working again. And so we're texting Doug, trying to troubleshoot it. Nothing's working. So I was just like, you know what? I offer to buy him a new gun for Christmas. And Phil was like, yeah, me and Tanya would be like in on that as well. This was Black Friday because it was the day after Thanksgiving. I went to Home Depot, found a nail gun that fit Doug's specs, and we have a new blue Makita, which was very nice. And what I like about it is that it's not as scary as the old one, because the old one would only go on like every time you put pressure on it with the trigger held, it releases a nail. So it's very scary. This one has an option where you can just do one at a time. That's more my speed, so that's pretty exciting. Yeah. Shiny new nail gun.
You're kind of weird. Well, as long as it's put together. It's just caught weird.
See how much nicer that sounds and less aggressive? What a perfect gift.
Because Phil and I couldn't actually nail things together, we decided just to make the rest of the cuts for the walls that we were confident were right. So when you're framing the walls, especially the pieces underneath the window, you really want those to fit and make sure that they're right. So you don't want to just take it by the blueprints numbers. You want to put everything in and see what size board you need. So there were some that we had to wait on, but we cut as many as we could, and that was awesome. So when Doug and David came back, we were basically putting together like a kit. That made things much easier and smoother, though there still was a lot of mathing. That still needed to be done just to make sure everything was right, because again, there's very little room for error with a tiny house.
They are clamping the header for the window to the header of the wall so that we can assemble all the pieces.
Oh, it sure is. Now you should be able to let go of that, right?
How's that new present, Doug?
It's fantastic. Have you seen it? Look, you can put it on this, have it on Pro mode.
Pro mode.
The rest of the walls, basically it was just kind of a few hours a day here and there where we could get at it. So we did the bar short wall that's on top of the gooseneck, and then we started on the long wall that's the back wall. And that wall we did in much smaller pieces, learning from our mistake of the big one that was just way too heavy. So we did this one in chunks, and it was still kind of heavy, but not as bad as that first day. Bonus, I also put in the screws in the flooring where the seams are, where they're not tongue and groove. So that was kind of tricky because you kind of need them to go at a slight angle so that they grab the 2x4 underneath. And that helped a lot with, just because it's been out in the weather, the flooring started to bow up where those creases were. So this tightened that in nicely. So floor is back to being flat and straight. The walls are done. Next up is roofing, which is very exciting. It's going to be a little different with the walls because it's all a bunch of 2x6s and you have to cut at certain angles to make the rafters. So that will be interesting. I'm very curious to see how long that takes, but hopefully I'll update y'all soon. And if I don't see you before then, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I will talk to y'all later.